Hi team, and welcome back to section 2 of housing options. In this section we will be discussing the various types of housing. Before diving into the various historical types of housing and dwellings, I must elaborate a little bit on the fact that housing changes, and these occur according to the needs and desires of those who occupy it. Housing also changes because of other outside influences. These include historical, cultural, societal, environmental, economic, technological, and governmental influences. Those are 7 changes that have outside influences on a person's housing preference. Historical influences on housing, though, goes back a very long time. As you can see, we have natural shelters, which are heavy reliance on landscape, such as trees, caves, and thickets. Portable shelters are nomadic people which means these people needed to be able to get up and move their shelters to various places. They needed to have easy to take down, move, and put up. And it usually consisted of collapsible framework covered in skins, branches, or grasses. And then we have a more permanent shelter, and this came with the development of farming and animal herding. These shelters were made of bamboo reeds, mud, clay, and ice. For these early and primitive shelters, early humans lived in caves that provided a degree of safety protection from the weather and wild animals. In these caves, they helped people meet that basic need for shelter, a place to sleep and rest. Another form of early shelter was a dugout, a large hole dug into the earth. Dugouts were warm in cold weather and cool when there was warm weather. Sometimes a dome-shaped covering was added to the dugout to make it roomier. Typical materials for such coverings were animal skins, mud, bark, or mud and branches. Housing of Native Americans. Some of these early Native American cliff dwellers often used crude rock, overhang, or cliff for housing. The overhangs or cliffs were modified for housing by adding an enclosure which gave warmth, privacy, security to the cliff dwellers. Living in cliffs gave the Native Americans the ability to see great distances, an added advantage to their security. Native Americans occupied North America before European settlers began to arrive. These materials used for their housing depended on what was available in the section of the country in which they lived. Some of these people lived in huts that were constructed from a framework of poles with the coverings of thatch, hides, or mud over the framework. Others lived in teepees or wigwams. Some Native Americans lived in permanent dwellings constructed of adobe. There are many different types of Native American dwellings and their locations. The various degrees of these very primitive housing of the Native Americans consisted of the Pueblo, which is in the southwest, the Hogan in the southwest, ripped roof rectangular house, teepee in the Great Plains, the wigwam in the northeast, a framework hut as well in the northeast, and a pole and thatch in the southeast of the Americas. Moving much further up the timeline, we are going to explore different housing types. We have the single family versus a multifamily. In this section, we will be discussing single family, which is a freestanding house. And that means usually these houses include ownership of the land on which the dwelling is built on, which also your yard area and private entrances. Some of these examples are custom homes, tract homes, manufactured homes, and mobile homes. Our first example is a single family home, also known as a custom home. And that means the house is usually a standalone structure. It's also designed by a family or with the help of professionals with the intent in living that home, and or a spec home that could be built by a company with the intent to sell. Some homes are custom built from stock plans. In these cases, people can go to a contractor and look at a house plan. They then can choose the plan that they want, and the contractor builds a house for them on their site. They also incorporate any adjustments or individualized treatments the owner desires. For example, the owner may want a larger window for a different location than the plan indicates. A owner-built home or a custom home is usually designed for people with lots of spare time, energy, and building skills. This type of house can be less expensive than a custom-built house, though. There is less investment in money and more investment in such resources as time and energy. Sometimes the owner hires a contractor to construct the house shell while the owner does the interior work. In other cases, the owner builds the entire house, often with the volunteer help from friends. Building codes usually require qualified experts to handle some parts of the project, such as electricians and plumbers. In contrast, developers sometimes build entire neighborhoods at once, creating a tract house. They build these houses before selling them. Repeating one or two sets of the plans throughout the development saves money and construction costs. Tract homes lack the individuality because there are few variations. However, these are less expensive to buy than custom-built homes. So tract homes. These are types of housing development in which multiple similar homes are built on a tract of land which is subdivided into individual lots. These next two homes we will explore are a modular home and or a mobile home. A modular home is constructed at the factory and brought to the home site in sections. These sections are then bolted to a cement lab. Modular homes is a factory built in a coordinated series of modules. The wall, floor, ceiling, and roof panels are combined in boxes or modules, complete with windows, doors, plumbing, wiring, all before delivery to the site. When modulars arrive at the housing site, workers place them on the foundation and join them together. These housing units are built to meet local building codes and standards. Both manufactured homes and mobile homes are single-family dwellings that are completely built in a controlled factory environment. The completed housing units have attached chassis and wheels and are moved to a lot or housing site. Units built before 1976 are called mobile homes, while those built later are called manufactured housing. Mobile homes is a type of home that is moved to a site by truck, as the house is on wheels. These homes are usually permanently parked in a mobile home park or subdivision, and many come completely furnished. Either a manufactured or mobile home is one solution to affordable home ownership, since cost is considerably below that of a conventional site-built home. Manufactured housing is available in many sizes. Small homes come in single units or single sectional housing. Larger homes come in 2 or more units, either double sectional or multi-sectional, that are then joined at the site. There are length and width limitations in these larger homes because of transportation requirements for pulling them across highways to their sites. Although manufactured houses and mobile homes have wheels for moving, less than 5% ever move from their original site. Each state has laws that movers must follow when moving one home. Some local governments have additional rules, such as zoning regulations that prohibit the placement of these homes in certain areas. The owners can move single sectional homes as long as they follow all laws. In this section, we will now explore single family versus multifamily. So multifamily means buildings designed to house more than one family. These dwellings can include such areas as pools, parking lots, and recreational areas. Some examples will be duplex, attached homes, townhouse or row house, apartments, condominiums, and cooperative units. A multifamily house is a structure that provides housing for more than one household. Each household within the dwelling has its own distinct living quarters. Today, lifestyles are changing and the demand for multifamily housing is increasing. In the past, single people, young married couples, and retired people were the primary residents of this type of housing. Now, others are turning to multifamily housing too. This type of housing is usually less costly and easier to maintain than single-family homes. Some multifamily housing is in the high-rise buildings. Other multifamily housing are in low-rise buildings. These low-rise buildings may include duplexes, which are 2 houses, or triplexes, which are 3 houses together, or quadplexes, 4 homes. In the images below, we have a duplex or a triplex, a building divided into 2 or 3 family living spaces. Homes can either be side by side or on top of each other. A multifamily for a townhouse, which means many single-family dwellings attached to each other. In the city, may be referred to as a row house, and each family has their own entrance from the street. 2 other multifamily dwellings would include apartments or condominiums. Apartments are rental properties that families do not own their space. These are rentals. Many apartment buildings have laundry appliances, tennis courts, and swimming pools available to residents. Some large, high-rise buildings are like small cities. They include business offices, stores, recreational facilities, and parking spaces. Penthouses are suites located at the very top of an apartment building. Garden apartments are 1-story units with landscape grounds. These rentals are often vary in number and type of facilities offered. A condominium is an apartment that is owned by a tenant. They pay a fee for upkeep of common areas. A condominium is a type of ownership in which the buyer owns an individual living space and also has an individual interest in the common areas and facilities of the multi-unit project. With the condominiums, people share the ownership of the sites, parking areas, recreational facilities, hallways, and lobbies with other condominium owners. Although condominium owners own their units, they must answer to the desires of the entire group of owners for the certain items. For instance, the appearance of the outside of their units, their yards must be under control of the group's management. Finally, the last multifamily unit we will explore is a cooperative unit. The word cooperative refers to a type of ownership in which people buy shares of stock in a non-profit housing corporation. These shares entitle them to occupy a unit in the cooperative building. When people move into a cooperative unit or co-op, they buy their apartment by purchasing shares of stock in the corporation. If a resident wants a larger unit, he or she must purchase more stock. Residents have an absolute right to occupy the unit for as long as they own the stock. Although residents do not own their units, they own an individual interest in the entire property. They have a voice in how cooperation operates and even get a chance to select their neighbors. When people want to buy shares in the corporation, they move into the building, the members of the corporation vote on admitting them. An advantage of living in a co-op is that neighbors meet regularly and work together to create a pleasant housing environment for all residents. A disadvantage to anyone who disagrees with the majority on an issue must accept and live with the decision.